So thank you to the communities who are attending. Thank you to my board members who are here as well too. I know I saw Judy Burke from Middlesex Community College, Katie Enright from Howard Stein Hudson, Tom O'Donnell from UMass Lowell, Jessica Levesque from Instrumentation Lab, and of course, Steve Horn from Farley White. We'll be hearing more from you, Steve, and Deb Bergholm-Petka from Lowell General. And Deb, will be hearing more from you and your team. I know Angela is here and Tracy as well from Lowell General. So I look forward to hearing more from you guys. Thank you for joining the conversation. And part of what I'm leading up to is, well, I know there are a number of people from the City of Lowell here as well too. Craig, thanks for joining our virtual networking. And I see Maria Dickinson, Tom Lamont, and let's see, Terry Ryan, I believe, is joined, and of course Natasha Vance, who's going to be presenting. But I wanted to also, I'm leading up to welcoming Christine McCall, the Economic Development Director from the City of Lowell, because I think I've seen Christine probably on a weekly basis since this has all started, but she started, I think, I don't know if I see her right now, Christine, but she started a couple months before COVID hit. And so Christine, I don't know if we've ever actually even met in person, but I feel as though we keep talking. So I wanted to introduce you to the Middlesex 3 community, and thank you for all the work. You've just jumped right in from the very beginning. And I know there's a lot going on. We're going to hear a lot about it from what you guys have been doing during COVID, the Lowell Overpass, the Judicial Center. I know last time when Natasha presented a lot of these projects, they're huge projects, but you just kind of have one after another. So you've got a lot going on in Lowell. So we look forward to hearing more about what's happening. And then I'm just going to go through our agenda as well too. And then after we hear from the City of Lowell, I'm sorry if we can go back, we'll hear from Steve Horn at Farley White. We talked a little bit during our virtual networking about the future of the real estate, commercial real estate in Lowell, and there's just so many unknowns happening there. So I know Steve has some good news, some bad news, so we look forward to hearing his inside information. And then we'll hear more from Lowell Generals, how they're going to keep us all safe during the fall and winter months. So there's a lot about, if we go to the next slide, there's certainly a lot going on in terms of real estate. And so what we decided to do is to have these monthly meetings where we look at different real estate markets and to bring some of the people who have been working in the markets to talk and to try to educate us or enlighten us on some of the things that have been happening in the real estate market. So the next one that we have going on is the restaurant webinar series. So we'll be sending more information out about that. We can go to the next slide. There's a lot in these slides. We'll be sending them out so you can look at them more. But then we'll continue to have more what's happening meetings with the town of Tingsboro and Tewksbury, and Lexington. And then we also have our business leadership series where we have Stephanie Pollock coming to talk about what's going on with the future of transportation and what they've been doing on the state level. In addition, Mark Melnick from the Donahue Institute will be giving us an economic and employment outlook for 2021. So we'll be sending more information on that. And if you'd like to get involved, if we go to the next slide, we have our subcommittee meetings that are going on with transportation, workforce development, and real estate infrastructure. Our next one is on October 1st. If you'd like, with workforce development, if you'd like to get involved, you'd like to hear what's going on, if you'd like to be at the table or just even make connections, we'd love to have you there. So please, if you want to become involved with our subcommittees, we'd love to hear from you. Again, there's a lot of information there. We'll send that out later. And the next slide is, we'd love to hear from you. If you'd like to connect with us, please, here's our contact information. We'll put it in the chat, and we ask everybody else, please put your information in the chat. We'd love to hear who's here. And part of what we're trying to do is just continue these connections, these conversations, and keep development projects happening. So, you know, we try to be as creative as possible. So if there are other ways to do it, we'd love to hear your ideas as well too. But even if we want to get together for virtual something, or maybe even outdoor coffee meetings, we'd be happy to do that too. And so I think with that, also, as the speakers speak, we'd love to have you just put your questions into the chat box, and we'll send them to the right person. And so with that, we're going to be moving people off screen so we can focus on the speakers one at a time. And so first, I'd like to welcome Christine McCall from the City of Lowell, and Natasha Vance will be speaking. Oh, if you can go back actually just for a second, Erin. And then Christine, once you're done, if you want to hand it over to Steve over at Farley White, and then Steve, if you want to hand it over to Lowell General, Deb and Tracy are going to be speaking, and then we can just go through it. And then we'll bring everybody back on so we can have more of a conversation and get rid of these presentations. So with that, we'll be moving everybody off screen, and I will welcome Christine McCall and Natasha Vance. So thank you.
Do you want me to just get started, jump right in?
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll
well, thanks for the
going,
introduction,
thanks.
Stephanie. I really appreciate it. As she mentioned, I started in this position at the end of February, so just a few weeks before the shutdown. I really appreciate the economic developer meetings that M3 has set up. I think it's been really helpful to talk to other people in my position and other communities. It's really helped during this challenging time. Before I toss it over to Natasha, I just want to introduce Craig Thomas. He's the Deputy Director of DPD, and he's with us this morning.
Oh, thanks, Christine. I just wanted to say thank you for making time for attending, and we appreciate your willingness to take a deeper dive into what's happening in Lowell. Not everyone always dives in that deep end of the pool, so you're most welcome.
Thanks, Craig. If we go to the next slide, and I'll toss it over to Natasha. We have a lot going on with transportation projects, and so she can give us a high-level view because I know we only have 15 minutes.
Thanks, Christine. I'm Natasha Vance. I'm the transportation engineer for the city. I'm going to talk fairly briefly about as Stephanie said, we have a lot of transportation projects in the city, really big and big dollar tag projects. Can we go to the next slide? All right, so probably the most impactful project we have in the city right now is the Overpass redesign. If you're familiar with Lowell, you know currently there's sort of a mini rotary that has multiple lights, and as you come up the ramps, if you're trying to say go up Appleton Street, you've got to go through a series of lights and go around the roundabout to get there, which is relatively, it's not terrible from efficiency, but there is no real pedestrian infrastructure, there's no bike infrastructure, there's no transit infrastructure, and it's a very unsafe area. Literally almost 300 crashes in just a 4-year time period when we were looking at the design for this project. And then of course the Judicial Center, Lowell was chosen for that site, and it went in on Jackson Street. So part of the MEPA process for the Judicial Center was to redesign the Overpass. So this is ultimately the configuration that we determined was going to work the best for all parties. So single occupancy vehicles will experience maybe a 20 to 30 second delay compared to what they're experiencing right now, but there's rapid bus lanes, the red lanes you see in the middle, the buses will have priority in that section. Also, emergency vehicles will be able to use that section. And it's kind of hard to see from this scale, but there are separated bike paths and buffered and separated pedestrian paths, and it makes it feasible for someone to arrive at Gallagher Terminal by bus or commuter rail and then walk safely to the Judicial Center. So we're really happy with the design. And then from a maintenance perspective, we'll no longer have 2 bridges to maintain. If you go to the next slide. So this is what it looks like right now. The underpass is, so it's going to be staged construction. We're in stage 2, and the contractor actually was able to cut a few months off the project by combining stages 1 and 2 together and completing them more rapidly than we had anticipated. We expect the project to be completed by the end of 2022, and then all punch list items by January 2023, which is pretty exciting. So the first step was closing down the underpass and starting the fill process. So it looks really different out there. This picture is maybe a month old, and it looks pretty different already. Ultimately, they'll build some temporary paving, and the next big step will be demolishing these bridges. And then you'll start to sort of experience what the Lord Overpass will be like, ultimately. So we think that, and this is a $22 million project with MassDOT funding about 13 million of that. So we're really appreciative of that. Next slide, please. Okay, so the Tiger Bridges, we're well into this project. Essentially, these were some structurally deficient, very deteriorated bridges that were, they limited the ability of our buses and all of our emergency vehicles. They couldn't go over most of these bridges. So some of them are already done. Some were just some minor repairs. So that's Merrimack Street over Western is completed. Merrimack Street over Merrimack Canal is completed. We're getting close on Pawtucket Street over Northern Canal. It's open to pedestrian and bike traffic and will be open to vehicle traffic next year. Then Pawtucket Street over Pawtucket Canal has been completely closed. We did experience during construction, there was a minor collapse. That sounds much worse than it is. The bridge itself didn't collapse, just a small piece of it, but we did determine that it wasn't safe for vehicular traffic. So although pedestrians and bikes can still go over that bridge, we closed it to vehicles. And that obviously, anytime you close a road, especially a main arterial in the city, complicates traffic and congestion. But the good news is come October 2nd, so just a few weeks away, it will reopen to outbound traffic. So traffic, from downtown toward the UMass Lowell campus. So we're excited that that's going to happen. And then they will flip over to build the other bridge in the other direction, and that will be completed in April of 2022, I believe. And then Central Street over Pawtucket Canal, if you drive through there right now, you'll see just all kinds of construction happening inside the canal. We went through a real process to try and dewater those canals. A lot of the locks throughout the canal system are not in great shape. Central Rivers Power bought the canal system and the hydropower company from Enel, and they are working on repairing all of those things. But so there, we needed a drawdown, and they're building boat ramps and all kinds of stuff. So that's actually a really, if you drive or walk through there, pretty interesting construction project to look at. Okay, next slide. I feel like I'm talking too much, I'm sorry. Route 38 improvements, that's another MassDOT project. So the city is not, we don't have any active oversight or involvement, but it was something that really needed to happen. And the biggest part of the project is the box widening along Nesmith Street next to Kittredge Park. And the widening itself is completed. They're in the process of finalizing. If you drive through there, the retaining wall is built. There will be a handrail on top of that, and the sidewalk will be adjacent to it. And then there are two other intersections included in that project. That would be the Phoenix, Douglas, and Rogers intersection. So those intersection improvements is just a traffic signal replacement and adding pedestrian buttons and crosswalks, so making it safer for pedestrians. And then also the signal at Rogers, Boylston, and Fairmont and Laurel. So that there's some changes to how traffic will circulate through there and better pedestrian infrastructure, buttons, et cetera, to enable people to get to Shed Park. The Rourke Bridge is currently under design. This is another MassDOT project, and this is again a massive project. Eventually, when that bridge is built in the next 5 to 8 years, it will cost about $100 million. However, it looks like it's going to be a signature bridge and just a beautiful addition to the city's transportation infrastructure. I'm a member of the Rourke Bridge Working Group, and right now they're in the process of determining the appropriate alignment. There are 3 alignments they're considering, and they have to look at both the cost, like if it's longer or shorter, how much the bridge will cost because of that, and then the environmental considerations, the hydraulic considerations, and then traffic considerations. So all of those things will play into it to determine the appropriate alignment. And then they will start looking at the bridge cross-section and the bridge type. And that's really the exciting part, where it looks like there will be great pedestrian and bike infrastructure over the bridge. The city has an earmark that from the state that will look at pedestrian and bike infrastructure leading up to the bridge. So I think that's a really exciting project, and it's going to be pretty fantastic for the city. I'm really hoping it'll go design build, and we'll have a new bridge in more like 3 to 5 years instead of 5 to 8 years, but we'll have to see. And then Merrimack, the Riverwalk Phase 2 and the Concord River Greenway, those are both trail projects. They're currently underway. Construction will be complete in summer of 2021. And both of those projects are going to add additional outdoor space for pedestrians. And is there another slide? What's next? Okay, so Streets F and G and the Signature Bridge are almost done. That project's been delayed through a number of things, with problems with COVID-19, problems with getting materials, but it's almost done. And pretty soon we'll be able to use that as soon as the lots 8 and 9 are developed. Obviously the Justice Center is open, Lord Overpass is underway. Next slide. And the garage. Okay, so again, the garage has gone up so quickly. I'm sure everybody's watched that. It's been amazing. It was kind of cool. It was like putting a Lego set together at first. Really neat. But so that's, we were hoping to be open in October, but COVID-19 has intervened. Again, some supply issues and some workers testing positive, kind of slowing things down a little bit. But it looks like the garage will be open in November of 2020. And I think that's all from me. I'm happy to answer questions at the end. Christine, let me turn it back over to you.
Thank you, Natasha. That was awesome. Yeah, it's been really exciting. I think, you know, COVID has brought a lot of challenges and has slowed some projects down, but on the other hand, it's allowed us to expedite a lot of things. There's a lot happening in Lowell and it's really exciting. Erin, if you want to go to the next slide. We talked a little bit about this in the, I know I only have a few minutes, but we talked a little bit about this in the networking phase of today's program. I just really wanted to highlight how collaborative and creative and how quick City of Lowell staff responded to the COVID-19 crisis to assist small businesses. You know, I just want to give a shout out to Maria Dickinson and Tom Lamond in my office, but also Terry Ryan in the parking department. He was actually the first, I think, the first department to implement a 15-minute metered pickup spot for takeout and, you know, running into pick up for your food. I think businesses have really appreciated that. Almost every business downtown and outside of and then in our business quarters took advantage of the program. We worked collaboratively with the manager's office and the mayor's office just to promote takeout for our restaurants, because I think restaurants and retailers were most quickly and most obviously affected by the pandemic. And then we repurposed a lot of public space, and then that was great collaboration with DPW. So the city purchased jersey barriers and blocked off parking spaces for restaurants and to expand so they'd have more room for outdoor dining. Then we collaborated with Case, and we designed and purchased these vinyl coverings to make the space more pretty, to activate it, to make it seem less of an industrial construction site and more of a welcoming place for people to dine out. We also collaborated with Case to do sort of activate little busker stops in downtown Lowell so that people could still enjoy arts and entertainment at a physical distance, because all of our events have been canceled. And we're still working with them to sort of try to figure out alternatives for other events like Winterfest and City of Lights, because I don't think requirements are going to be lifted. And one of the other things I'm really proud of DPD is we have put almost over $300,000 out the door to support small businesses, either with emergency grants to help with utilities, rent, payroll, PPE, but also marketing. We really are trying to help businesses build resiliency, build websites, build a social media presence, to communicate with their customers quickly and efficiently, in the event that we may be reduced back to a phase 2 or even a phase 1. And the further along we go on, in COVID, we are gonna, and I'll let Steve talk more about it, is we need to start thinking more thoughtfully about how we can help, how we should deal with the change in our commercial properties, and help some of our other small businesses in Lowell outside of retail and restaurants. So I look forward to working with Farley White and other partners in the city. So with that, I will toss it over to Steve to give us an update on what's going on with Farley White.
So while we're waiting for Steve to come on board, I just want to thank Christine and Natasha, and I apologize for only having 20 minutes because that was a lot that you've packed into 20 minutes, and I know there's a lot going on. So thank you all. Thank Craig for all the work that you guys have been doing, and your whole staff. You've been doing an amazing job. And I'm sure the work on the Rourke Bridge is music to Steve's ears, because that's going to certainly help one of his properties. So I will I will now turn it over to Steve as well too. Thanks. Thank you again.
Thank you, Stephanie, and thank you, Christine and Natasha. So I'm Steve Horn. I work for Farley White. They are a Boston-based commercial real estate developer, landlord, and property manager. And Farley White owns 4.5 million square feet in New Hampshire, Massachusetts, and Florida. But before I dive in, I think I feel a little bit silly talking today because I think we are in an unprecedented time, and the City of Lowell has done such an incredible job fostering resilience in small businesses and just the Lowell population as a whole. You know, I sit in Lowell on a daily basis, and I don't think it's slowed down at all over the last 6 months. And then furthermore, you've got Lowell General Hospital, which will be following me, and I think they are on the cutting edge and the front lines of the current situation that we're undergoing, and doing such an incredible job at that. So for me to complain that that the office vacancy has slightly ticked up, it seems a little selfish. But if you'll just indulge me for the next 10 minutes, we'll dive right in. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about some of the good news that has come out over the past 6 months, as well as some of the bad news and what Farley White sees going forward. So the advantage that Farley White has owning property in New Hampshire, Massachusetts, and Florida is on a daily basis, I am talking to brokers in these various markets. I'm talking to customers of ours in various markets. So we have a unique visibility into a lot of different regional markets. And the overall theme and response regarding commercial real estate is this is bad, but it's not the apocalypse. And so Aaron, if we can jump to the next slide. So the good news, and both the next two slides are going to focus on the greater Boston metro real estate market as a whole. And then I will do my best to focus that on Lowell. But the good news is we've seen an increase in demand for space in advanced and specialized industries. And what Massachusetts has always done so well is they've let highly intelligent people do incredible things. And so the industries we're seeing growth in right now are biotech, life science, biomanufacturing, 3D printing, robotics. And I think the number that keeps getting thrown around is there's 2 million square feet of life science tenants out in the market in greater Boston. That means that you've got 2 million square feet of people looking, or 2 million square feet of space looking for a home. And there've been a couple anecdotal success stories that we've seen on the life science side of things. Most recently, 75 Hayden Ave down in Lexington. That was a 200,000 square foot lab building built on spec by King Street Properties. And it is going to be 100% leased on delivery, which I think is happening in the next 2 months. And so I think that shows there is a demand for this life science space. And there are also developers who are meeting it with new supply. And one of the most important metrics we always look at when we look at the health of the market is the investment sales volume. And investment sales demand for both lab buildings and then lab conversion buildings is at a record high, and it's getting record prices even through this pandemic. With all the economic uncertainty, people are still buying buildings. And so lab groups, they're moving out of Cambridge, they're moving to South Boston, they're moving to Framingham, they're moving to Norton, they're going to Worcester, as well as growing in Cambridge and squeezing into every inch there. So what does this mean for Lowell? So Farley White owns the former Wang manufacturing facility at 1001 Pawtucket Boulevard. It's 835,000 square feet. You know, when Dr. Wang built it, it is an impressive facility with plenty of power, plenty of infrastructure. So why don't we just convert that to lab space? Well, I think these lab groups, and I was talking about this a little bit earlier on the virtual networking, these lab groups have a very specific set of needs. And we are able to fill some of those needs, but not all of them. So when you see the success stories, you're seeing a lot of single-story flex buildings get taken down, and you're seeing a lot of buildings that are either warehouse or industrial conversions to hard lab space. And what that is going to cause is it's going to cause a displacement of tenants in the advanced manufacturing, 3D printing, and robotics field. And so I think that, you know, our industrial building, as well as some of the other industrial buildings that have sat vacant on the upper Route 3 corridor, will quickly begin to fill up. Now, Aaron, if we could jump to the next slide. So the bad news. The bad news is that while overall vacancy has not skyrocketed, the population at our various buildings is very low. And so real estate is a slow industry. And you know, a lot of the contracts, the leases that we have, they range from 3 to 20 years. The way that real estate developers carry debt on their books, it's over decades. The financing of the buildings, they're 10, 15, 20, 30-year loans. And so I think the saying has always been, real estate moves slow and it moves heavy. Now, in March or February, or really whenever all of this took that turn, it necessitated a fast and rapid change. And so what happened was the phenomenon of remote working, a concept that had entered our world over the last 5 to 10 years, all of a sudden became commonplace. And we've seen a lot of groups have not only lived with it, but they've kind of fallen in love with remote work. And so what has happened is you now have 5.8 million square feet of sublease space available in the greater Boston market. And that increased by 1.7 million square feet in Q2. Just as a side note, lab sublease space is close to zero. So this 5.8 million square feet is almost all pure office. And what is frightening about that number, really the 1.7 million number, is it doesn't just indicate a 1.7 million square foot increase in supply. It also shows that 1.7 million square feet of demand has been removed from the table. And so large users, you know, groups like Fidelity, groups like Wayfair, these large users in the urban core, they have staggered return to office plans. You know, some folks will start coming back in early 21. You'll get to 50% population by June of 21, so on and so forth. And then in the suburbs, talking to our existing customers in the 2 million square feet we or my bosses own up and down the Route 3 corridor, I think a lot of them still don't have a plan to return to the office. I did see our friend Corinne is sitting in her beautiful office in the boot mill right now, but I think most folks are still at home because they want to be conscious of their health, the health of others, and they're still dealing with other consequences and implications of this situation, such as childcare, schooling, and balancing the other responsibilities that they have. And then lastly, limited investment sales transactions for pure office. I think while you see that healthy metric on the lab side of things, it demonstrates that on the office side of things, it is slow. And then we will finish up, Aaron, with the last slide. So I think with what's to come is a very big and broad question. And I think it can be applied to both the real estate side of things as well as you know, the world as a whole. But I think option A is, you know, this is the new normal. These precautions that we're taking, these limitations that we are learning to adapt to, this is the way that we do business. This is the way that children get an education from K all the way through college. Option B was we quickly return to life as it was. This is all a dream. You know, that is a little bit tongue in cheek. And then option C, which I think is the most likely, is a mix of A and B. And I think that we have changed, and in some ways, I think we've changed for the better. But I think there's probably going to be a return with an uptick in office space demand in the greater Boston market. But I certainly think most users will shrink their footprint. I think people feel that the technology we use today, such as Zoom or Microsoft Teams, is efficient and can be a terrific supplemental tool to having a smaller office footprint. But most importantly on what's to come is I think Farley White is trying to figure out how to set up their 1.5 million square feet of commercial space in Lowell for success. And I think we feel strongly that we have great partners in the City of Lowell, the planning department, the transportation department, the economic development team, as well as great neighbors in the city, such as Lowell General. So our strategy for the next 5 years is to figure out the customers that we want to sell space to, and then specifically target them. And so, I think one slide was almost entirely dedicated to life science. And we are unsure if we are the right landlord or if Lowell is the right location to land life science companies. I think they prefer close proximity to Cambridge. They prefer different types of buildings than what Lowell has an abundance of. So what I think we feel strongly is that for larger blocks of space, it is going to be advanced manufacturing groups that are able to utilize the brains coming out of UMass Lowell, as well as Middlesex Community College, the lab techs coming out of both UMass Lowell and Middlesex Community College, as well as more of the unskilled labor that you see on the advanced manufacturing floor that Lowell has with the population it has. And then from an office perspective, I think that many of the groups over the last 10 years have fallen into this, the acronym is TAMI, it's Tech, Advertising, Media, Information Services. I think we are going to trend back to an earlier time where many of the office tenants are things like law offices that want to be close to the courthouse, accounting practices, more classic conventional office uses where it is important for them to have a space to meet with customers, as well as to have a space for teamwork, collaboration, and mentorship. All that being said, I think Lowell is set up for great success in the long run. And if anybody needs office space, don't hesitate to reach out. I know a landlord who's hungry for deals. And that's all I have.
Thanks, Steve. That was great. And you're going to stick around as well too after for questions, because I've got a couple as well too, and I've learned a lot. But while we're bringing Deb and Tracy from Lowell General on, I did want to bring up the idea. Maybe we can talk more about it after with the training, because I know UMass Lowell, Middlesex Community College, as well as the career centers are on the line. And there's a lot of focus on advanced manufacturing. So I think this matches up so nicely with all the discussions, but how to make certain that we retrain people to make certain that the companies you're trying to bring in will have the employees in the area to fill this space. So we can talk more about that afterwards as well too. So thank you, Steve, and stick around afterwards if you could, but we're gonna move you off screen and highlight Angela, Deb, and Tracy from Lowell General, you're gonna keep us all safe and healthy. I'll say over the next few months, but I'll let Deb. I'm going to turn it over to you. How about that? Since you're on my board, and then you start the conversation. Does that work?
That sounds great. Thanks so much, Stephanie. And my introduction is going to be a quick one. I just wanted to take the opportunity to thank you, Stephanie, Middlesex 3, your team, and the folks that went before us from the City of Lowell and Steve from Farley White for this opportunity to share the what's happening in Lowell perspective from Circle Health and Lowell General Hospital. We're really excited to have the opportunity to talk to you today and connect with you with a more specific lens on what's happening in response to COVID-19, how we as an organization are doing our best to continue to serve the community and keep them safe at this time. And I can't think of a better person to highlight that work than our Director of Emergency Services and Urgent Care Services, Tracy McPadden, and she's going to talk to you about how we are supporting the community in reopening businesses, as well as supporting the community in delivering safe care during the pandemic. So I'll turn it over to Tracy at this time. Thank you all.
Hi, everybody. My name is Tracy McPadden, and I'm very happy to be here with you today. And I would say to Christine, Natasha, and Steve, the work that you're doing definitely impacts healthcare overall, both for access to our sites and then also biotech and labs are something that we certainly need. And we had a sudden surge in the need for additional laboratory testing supplies and obviously the work towards a vaccine for COVID. So we definitely, we're all connected for sure. If you could go to the next slide. This is just my name, and I work for Lowell General Hospital and Circle Health, which is our parent company. And you can go forward. And so I just, really have to kick this off and remind everybody that we also manage employees and we care for patients within our community. And we have a very solid process in place to have strong infection prevention measures. We have PPE. We every day are talking about ways to improve both environmental and administrative processes to assure that both our employees are safe and well, and also that our patients who are coming to us are safe and well. So some changes that you will see is when you come in the door, you'll be met with a greeter screener who will make sure that you are hand sanitizing and putting on a clean mask, and that all people within our buildings have masks on. You can go forward. And just a reminder that I oversee also the Circle Health Urgent Cares. We have 4 sites in Billerica, Dracut, Westford, and Tewksbury, and we do offer services for both urgent care, minor illness and injury, but also occupational medicine services for folks. You can go forward. And obviously COVID-19, just as a backdrop to that, I want to just sort of go over some of the most frequent questions we're getting at the urgent care and through our occupational medicine services. A reminder that COVID-19 is one of many different types of coronaviruses. It was identified in 2019, which is where it got its name. And the bad thing about this disease is that the world has no immunity to it, and so that's why we're struggling to be sure that we are able to get a vaccine or otherwise minimize transmission using these safety techniques. You can go forward. And so the questions that I get most frequently right now from businesses and community members are questions about testing. And so I thought I would just give a brief overview of some of the different testing options that exist currently. And so the test that's being done is the SARS-CoV-2, that's the specific coronavirus that's leading to this pandemic. And there are different tests that were created for this, and obviously there had to be an emergency use authorization. This didn't exist last year at this time. And there are 3 different methods of tests. There is a PCR test that detects the actual molecular substance of the virus. That is a test that we perform here at Lowell General Hospital, Circle Health, and WellForce, which has Tufts Medical Center that we work with. And it is, the most sensitive test. It really does identify the virus the best. The downside is it's a bit more expensive and it takes longer for the results to come back. The second one, which unfortunately the slide is a little funny, but it is, that is called the antigen test. And you probably have heard about antigen testing. This looks for the actual antigen, which is the portion of your body that is fighting the virus. And this is generally less expensive and it can be done rapidly. So there are companies out there that are doing rapid tests, some other urgent cares, many of the surveillance testing that's happening at colleges and even with sporting venues where they're testing all of the athletes to be sure that they're healthy and that everybody contained within the bubble is safe. They're often using these antigen tests. And then lastly are the antibody tests. So this actually looks to see if your body has made antibodies against the virus. We do not do that for our urgent care patients. We, it certainly is something that is new data that's being studied to determine if antibodies against the virus actually prevents you from getting it again in the future. And there are not a lot of randomized controlled studies that give us that information, but that is the third type of test. I will add that the PCR test is most oftenly the one that if you travel to an international place and you go to the airport, they require you to have the PCR test. And we have had some patients who have called us and said that they went with a different type of test, an antigen test, and when they got to the airport, they would not let them proceed with their travel. You can go to the next slide. And then I wanted to just make sure that everyone knew, so if you had an employee that did need a test for whatever reason, how to find them within the state. If you go to the state DPH website and pull up this link, you can simply put in the zip code of where your employee is, and then it will give you a listing of all the local places that are offering testing. And if you go to the next slide, it then gives you the details. We'll just go forward to the next slide. There we go. It's a little bit small, but I was able to pull up the map and show our Circle Health Urgent Care Westford, and it gives the details of, the hours, who they are willing to test, insurance, if they'll cover uninsured patients, things like that. So you can get those details that you might need. And then, yeah, you can move forward. So who should be tested for COVID-19? So surveillance testing can be used as part of a comprehensive plan for keeping a community healthy. So that is just taking healthy people and just randomly testing them. And that is what all of our universities are doing with large groups of people that are cohorting or living in a communal living setting like a dorm. And they're just testing people to be sure they don't have anyone that is asymptomatic that is also spreading. Also, anybody that has symptoms should definitely consider testing. And when I say consider testing, you should certainly follow up with either your PCP or a healthcare provider. Going to get a test for a strep throat and then finding out 3 days later that you don't have COVID, but you had strep throat. Going to get a COVID test and if you had strep throat and you haven't had a workup and you didn't get that strep test, sometimes we're missing the strep for 3 days and it would have been better for you just to get on an antibiotic right away. So I just recommend if you have symptoms, we are encouraging people to come into our urgent care clinics to be seen, but certainly your PCP can also assist you with that and just do a good workup. We all know that the flu is coming soon as well, and that will be another reason that folks will have, fever, body aches, chills, and so we would certainly want to also rule that out as a reason for those symptoms. And then anyone that has a known close contact with someone with COVID-19. So when I say known close contact, that means that you have been within 6 feet of someone for more than 15 minutes without protective PPE, and that they have a known positive, and that is within 48 hours of their initial test or the onset of their symptoms. So those people should definitely be tested to be sure that they also do not have COVID-19 and may be an asymptomatic carrier. And then obviously anybody that travels from a high-risk state here in the state of Massachusetts must either quarantine or they must have a COVID-19 test, and so that's another reason for testing. We can move forward. And the second question that we get a lot of calls about is return to work. We have many people call and say, I was positive and my business won't let me come back to work until I get a negative test. And we are really using the CDC guidelines for return to work, which is symptom management. And so patients or community members, employees can return to work if they have had a positive COVID-19 after 10 days from the onset of the symptoms, and they have been fever-free without using any Tylenol, Motrin, or other fever-relieving medications for 24 hours, and all of their other symptoms are starting to diminish. The one symptom that is listed that may still retain is the loss of taste and the loss of smell, and that can last for a little bit, but the other things such as, body aches and sore throat, things like that, those should all be resolved. And if you go forward, for the testing perspective, a person who has a positive COVID-19 test can test positive for up to 3 months afterwards. And that does not mean that they are able to transmit it. It just means that they still have virus living on their body or in their body, and they are safe to return back to work and to their community, but I would not use the negative test as your decision maker for employees returning. Forward. And lastly, this is just a repeat. I know that all of our business workers know this, but just keep in mind that you want to really think about administrative and environmental controls to diminish transmission. And so all employees should have a symptom monitoring attestation process that they're checking before they come to work, taking their temperature, do they have any symptoms of sore throat, anything like that. And if they do, they should be able to reach out to their employer or come up with a plan on not going to work on that day, perhaps working at home on that day. Face masks should definitely be used for anyone that's working inside who has close contact with others. Environmental controls to ensure social distancing, that's the marks on the floor, that is separating offices, using Zoom technology for meetings, things like that. Making sure you're cleaning your high-touch surfaces, using EPA disinfection supplies to clean your area and make sure you have a routine process for that. Eliminate communal settings such as a break room. That's the one place if people are most at risk, they take their masks off to eat. They're all sitting together, and so if one person has COVID, they certainly could spread it to a group of your employees all at the same time. You can go forward. And I would lastly just say to you all that I think that most of our businesses have already been dealing with this, so they probably have already had to manage many of these. But if you haven't, I would certainly make sure that you have a policy to address if an employee has symptoms and what they're going to do, if they're going to stay home, work from home, whatever that might be. The management of employees who may have a household contact. So if you have a parent that works for you and their child is COVID test positive, how are you going to manage that? Are they still permitted to come to work, or would you have another plan for them, and how are you going to pay them or not? And then the management of employees who have, they are the primary caretaker, such as the child. And then lastly, the management of the positive employee that becomes sick while they're in your workplace. How are you managing isolating them, and then also cleaning your environment? And then do you need to get testing for any of your employees? And I would just layer on, we do have testing at all 4 sites. We also have a mobile testing site in Tewksbury, and we most days can offer same-day testing. So if you have an issue that comes up and you need their employee or a group of employees to be tested, you can call our Tewksbury site and they can assist you to get in for testing. It will be PCR testing, so it will take 24 to 48 hours to get results. It's not the antigen testing, but just wanted to throw that out there. And are there any questions?
So I gotta say, we are like right on time. I don't know how we did that, but thank you. Really, thank you for all the information. And what we're gonna do is, if I can take these, I'm gonna take the slides down, but there's a lot of great information in the slides. And if it's okay with all of our speakers, if I can send that out to the attendees, because I really like the information on the testing and whether they accept insurance and what. So we could put that in our chat as well too, but if I can send that out, I would, I think that would be helpful.
Sure.
Thank you. And I did have one question. I think this answered so many questions, but one was in terms of what companies should be doing with if somebody has COVID and such. You listed off that there should be plans in place. Is there a site with best practices and some place where companies can go to see what other companies are doing?
Well, you can certainly go to the CDC website, and there is a lot of information there with recommendations for businesses, and they break it down by type of business, restaurants, education. So you can find your business within that, and it can give you specific details related to your business.
Okay.
Also happy to help if anyone has any specific questions. We certainly are happy to help just kind of talk through that. We've done some walkthroughs with some places that have called us and just looked at sort of some of their setups, things like that. Yeah.
So they should contact you if they want to have that.
Any questions about that? Sure, they certainly can reach out to us at Circle Health Urgent Care.
Wonderful. Can we share we'll follow up with that, but if they can contact you as well, that would be okay?
Sure.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you. So I'm going to encourage, if anybody has questions, we can either move you over or just put them in the chat or the Q&A box. I do have one question from Elisa over at the town of Bedford. And Steve, this might be for you, but others can jump in as well too. So they have some vacant buildings that are not well suited for lab or manufacturing uses because of the low floor to floor heights. Do you have thoughts or advice on repurposing these buildings for uses that are more in demand? Do you want to jump in with that, Steve?
Yeah, I think that is one of those specific needs and occasionally wants of a lot of the users out in the market today. So I'm not sure what the slab to slab or slab to joist height you're working with over there, but I think we have found that a majority of the manufacturing users and the med device users really only need classic clear height. So call it 12 feet, but they're out there asking for 18 for warehousing purposes. Now that isn't to say that that some groups don't need 18 or 24 or 30 foot clear. Some groups have large pieces of equipment that they have to move in, and it's important to understand the capacity of the slab on the floor to accommodate that floor load, as well as to have the height to have that piece of equipment in there. But I think there are plenty of groups that can operate within classic clear heights. At 1001 Pawtucket Boulevard, we have Scheidt & Bachman, which moved from Burlington to our building, and they do advanced manufacturing in 13-foot clear. Rapid Micro Biosystems is a biotech that does it in 13-foot clear, and that's usually the size of the building when you remove the drop ceiling that's in there. So I think it's important to push back on the customers and gain a real understanding for the breadth of their need, as most of them may only need a small portion of high bay space, and then it's about investing the dollars to remove the floor between two levels and open it up so that you have 2 floor height.
Great, thank you very much. I want to just throw it out to the attendees. If anyone wants to jump on board or have questions as well too, please, I don't know if you can raise your hand or just shoot a question in the chat box. And I did want to pick up on something that you said earlier, Steve, in terms of the advanced manufacturing and what you're seeing in terms of the needs, because I know we've got a lot of the educational partners on board. And do you see, have you had the conversations as far as what are the workforce needs that companies are looking for in the manufacturing area?
I think it varies on a case-by-case basis, and I think advanced manufacturing is a large umbrella. So, for instance, I think some of the groups that are active in our market are established medical device firms. They are defense contractors that would have an advanced manufacturing R&D portion of their business, and so I think those groups, most of the employees, they run from having somewhere between 5 to 7 years of experience in the industry to folks who have upwards of 25 years of experience in the industry. So at the risk of painting with a broad brush, I think most of the established advanced manufacturers up here right now, their workforce already lives in the suburbs, so they are not trying to pull employees, a large number of employees, out of the urban core. I think what we've seen over the last 3 years is some advanced manufacturing startups have done large rounds of funding, they've landed large contracts, and have experienced rapid growth. And we've seen this really in the 3D printing and the robotics. Those are the 2 fields that come to mind immediately. And so I think what they want is they want young, energetic employees to be able to help grow the company under the mentorship and experience of maybe some of the folks who have previously worked at these other groups. So, you know, what really comes to mind is Symbotic, the robotics company. I can't count on both hands the number of executives who've come out of that company and now are operating in highly successful spinoffs. And so what they're doing is they're trying to get employees from all different ages and locations and educational backgrounds in order to make sure that they're seeing and hearing every creative idea on how to grow the business. That being said, they're not looking for people with both a doctorate and an MBA. So that's why they aren't laser focused on Cambridge. They're just looking for people who are hungry and willing to work hard. And I think the Merrimack Valley has plenty of those.
Great. And I'll hand it over to Christine and Natasha and Craig as far as how does that resonate with you guys as well too. And I love the Lord Overpass. I keep wait to see the finished product of that, but that's part of it as well too, right? You're bringing people from the Boston area to work in Lowell. So does this all mesh with what you're seeing as well?
I mean, I would say that one of the things that will come out of all of these projects is that it will be easier to get around Lowell, and particularly to get across the river. Like Steve has the property that he's referencing, and it's not very easy to get to. Like the river is definitely our pinch point. You know, we have multiple bridges, but most of them are one lane in each direction. And you know, if you've tried to go across the Rourke Bridge, certainly during the peak, it's a nightmare. But it's hard pretty much all the time. So I think improving the infrastructure and trying to drive a little bit of a mode shift. That's one of the reasons we're focused on pedestrian and bike improvements, is that if we can get people who want to live in Lowell and work in Lowell, and they can bike or walk to work and they feel safe and protected when they're doing those things, that will reduce congestion. It really doesn't take a large chunk of people. If we get 5% of people out of their cars and walking or biking or in transit, it really can have you wouldn't think it, but it really has an impact on congestion, especially during the peaks. So a big part of the focus of improving the transportation infrastructure is to help businesses and residents just have better quality of life and reduce the congestion. So.
Great, thank you. And what we have another question. I think this is for you as well, Natasha, in terms of updates for the Lowell connector regarding configuring near Thorndike and Gorham Street.
Sure. So that is another MassDOT project. That's the Lowell Connector Gorham intersection. And there are two proposed alternatives right now. So right now it's a kind of a Y intersection, and it is a very unsafe intersection, high crash volumes. If you've come off the connector there, you know you basically come to a dead end and there are houses in front of you, and you can either go right or left. And most people are turning left to trying to go into downtown. And so you go from 2 lanes immediately into merging into 1 lane. And there are a lot of crashes that occur because of that. And then there are a lot of people who block the intersection because they want to get out and the light is not long enough. So there's two proposals. One is a T intersection, which will limit and then extending the 2 lanes further into downtown. And then a roundabout, which roundabouts work for traffic calming and reducing speed. So another problem is when people are coming off a 55-mile-an-hour highway and they're coming to a dead stop, that can create problems too. So I would say the city really likes the roundabout option. We think that that's a really good, feasible solution. But it's still so those two concepts are still being considered. We had some public meetings and some public input. MassDOT has responded to those comments. It's actually in the city's court right now. We've got a couple comments to respond to, and then get back to the city, back to the residents who had comments and questions. And then MassDOT can move to selecting an alternative and move it to 25% design. It's not currently on the tip, so it's not currently funded. That is a project that will go hand in hand with the last piece of the Thorndike stretch project. So for the Hamilton Canal Innovation District, the MEPA permit addresses that entire corridor, starting from the connector where the connector hits Thorndike, all the way through the Lord Overpass and down to where Streets F and G are. So we built pieces of it. We built the Thorndike widening piece. We're working on the Lord Overpass right now. And then the third piece will be adding 2 lanes onto the connector coming out of downtown and eliminating the left turn onto the connector there. So those vehicles will have to turn right and get on where Gorham and the Lowell connector intersect. So those 2 projects have to go hand in hand. So we have the design and construction funds we have the design funds. I don't know that we have the construction funds for the 2 lanes onto the connector. So that project is probably a few years out, which is actually probably a good thing, just because we have so much going on right now, and city staff is really stretched very, very thin trying to manage those projects and answer questions and keep the public informed and keep the council informed. So once the Lord Overpass is nearing completion, I would anticipate we would actually move forward on that project. I hope that answered the question, but I'm happy to expound more. If
Yeah, there's so much going on and so much to do. And I know we're at 11 o'clock, a little past it. I've got one more question that I want to throw out in terms of when the Signature Bridge will be open for traffic. Is that an easy answer?
Yeah, so the Signature Bridge leads to a road that goes under parcels 8 and 9. Wind Development is building a building that will have a sky bridge, and we don't feel like it's safe for people to go under that until that part is enclosed. So that they are moving towards that. I would anticipate it will be in the spring, but I don't have a solid date on that. Craig, I don't know if you have a better idea of that date.
Yeah, just to jump in, I know we are at the end, and I'm gonna have to jump off in a second here myself. But yeah, the bridge is going to be done in the next couple of weeks. Unfortunately, as Natasha said, we're closing it for safety, but it should be open by the summer. We talked to Win about that, and that's a big UMass Lowell one. But also, I saw a comment about the great work at M2D2 and the iHub for folks over there. We're going to make some temporary improvements so it's easier to get through the new space and to the new garage, and that we're hoping we can have that open next summer. And so we have to coordinate with Win on that.
Great. Yep. So thank you for that. It's a little after 11. I know there's one question about immigration and workforce, but I think that's too big of an issue to deal with right now, but not deal with, but to address now. So my recommendation would be to please attend the Workforce Development Subcommittee meeting, and hopefully we can get, it's a big issue. So we're going to put that one on pause for a second right now. And there's a lot going on, and I know everyone needs to get back to work. So I thank you. Thank the City of Lowell. Thank Farley White. Thank Circle Health. Thank you for all your work that you guys are doing to keep development to projects moving forward. Thank you to AHB Architects for sponsoring and supporting this event. We're going to send out the presentations, if it's okay with everybody, so people have that information, because they were packed with a lot of stuff going on. So with that, I guess I'll wish you all a good day and enjoy it. It's nice outside. So thank you everyone for attending. Appreciate it. Have a good day.
Thank you, Stephanie.
Thanks.
Take care.
Thank you.
Thanks, Stephanie.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Take care.